You're watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi, and joining us from Tokyo is Professor Tomohiko Taniguchi. He is the special advisor for Prime Minister Shinzō Abe's cabinet. He's also the foreign policy speechwriter for Prime Minister Abe. Thank you so much, Professor Taniguchi, for giving us time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to address your audience. I think mostly who are in India, and given the importance of India-Japan relationship, it's an honor to speak with you.
It's our pleasure, Professor Taniguchi. Talking about India-Japan relations, we've seen the first tweets that came out from Prime Minister Shinzō Abe after his resignation. The press conference on Friday was, of course, to President Trump, to President Putin, to Prime Minister Netanyahu, the President of Taiwan, Scott Morrison, the US, I beg your pardon, Australian Prime Minister, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, if you look at US, India, and Australia, and a response to that, of course, Taiwan we know, and Israel we know as well, that's the Quad. And the Quad is a concept that Prime Minister Abe himself mooted or proposed so many years ago.
That's correct. When he was in office previously, that was between 2006 and 2007, his chronic illness of ulcerative colitis was even more severe. But he made an extended visit tour to Indonesia and then to India. And the highlight of his tour, and indeed highlight of his 1-year term at the time, was the address that he made to the Indian Parliament. And that was rather an extensive speech. And the title of that speaks volumes in retrospect, because the title was Confluence of the Two Seas. By two seas, it meant the amalgamation and combination of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And that was the genesis of the Indo-Pacific concept. And the second administration, Shinzō Abe's second administration that began in December 2012, further invested into that notion. And we're now talking about, as you say, a Quad relationship that's gaining strength year after year.
It's gaining strength year after year. Prime Minister Abe, as you're pointing out, was so far-sighted. 2007, I think, his first tenure when he gave that speech to the Indian Parliament. Now, we've come so far down the road since then, and the necessity of pushback against China's aggressiveness has become evident now. We've seen it from Japan, from the East China Sea to the South China Sea, to Bhutan, to Myanmar, to the northern Indian line of actual control. So in that sense, how important do you see the Quad and an open construct in terms of the Indo-Pacific?
Your question itself gives us an answer, but let me just repeat it. In 2007, Chinese expansionism was less obvious than it is today. And you and I could well anticipate that China is going to undergo an even more aggressive expansionist phase down the road. Why? There is a good reason. Next year, 2021, should make a centenary for the Chinese Communist Party. Ironically, the Tokyo Olympic Games opening ceremony, if all things go well, is going to take place on the 4th Friday, July next year. And the 4th Friday, July next year is going to be the 23rd of July, which is going to be the 100th year anniversary for the Chinese Communist Party. So now and then, beyond till 2049, when the new China, quote unquote, the People's Republic of China, is going to have to celebrate its centenary since its founding. We are entering into a very much shaky unpredictable territory and waters. So it is very much necessary for that reason for like-minded maritime democracies who share a similar set of values, namely India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, and perhaps from Europe, similar uh, countries such as the United Kingdom, why not, could join us because not a single country, be it the United States or whoever else, could make a good enough counterbalance anymore toward China.
A counterbalance, and that would be perfect to describe Prime Minister Abe and how he's dealt with China, because all the expansionist moves, whether it's vis-a-vis Senkaku Islands, that have been kept at bay, yet Japan has been engaging with China because of the deep economic roots with China. Is there a lesson to be learned on how to keep the dragon at bay?
That's exactly what Australian Premier Scott Morrison has repeatedly said when describing Shinzō Abe, when describing what Scott Morrison has, let's say, if I may say so, learned from Shinzō Abe to cut a very fine balance between engagement and counterbalancing or deterrence. Japan's economy has already been deeply engaged, like it or not, in
Yeah.
China. So you must continue to maintain the economic presence that Toyota, Nissan, Honda, all those house brand names have built and established in China. But in order for Japan to stay strong and stay firm vis-a-vis this gigantic neighbor, you must bring yourself closer to your allies and partner nations. And that's what Shinzo Abe has aimed at doing by pursuing his Quad strategy. And interestingly, if I may continue to say, China has been very much conspicuous in its silence about Japan's new directions. Let's say about Quad or about Japan's investment into cutting edge arsenal, or
Mhm.
Japan further warming up relationships with India, Australia, and so on and so forth. Xi Jinping has said nothing. I think it's very much interesting because Xi Jinping has acknowledged, in my view, that under Shinzo Abe, Japan has regained its strength.
So, are you saying, in effect, China only respects strength? You can't roll over. You can't show weakness. You have to show how strong you are. Because I'm saying that in the context of India as well, we've seen there's been fresh incidents along the line of control where the Indian army has apparently made some preemptive moves to stop the Chinese. Uh, in that sense, Professor.
Well, India is one country that's a well of knowledge and experiences with which it could tell the rest of the world as to how best one could deal with India. India being an old civilization, perhaps older than anyone else in the world, including China, but it is not making any source of respect in itself for China. In dealing with China, you must stay firm and strong, and you must not be isolated. Isolation is an invitation for aggression. So you must be well connected. I think your Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, has been doing a remarkable thing by bringing himself to the United States, to the UK, even to Fiji, where China is investing very much earnestly. Um, I know there are many opinions about your premier, but seen from my perspective, Narendra Modi is the first Indian prime minister with a post-colonial mindset who is very much happy in dealing with English-speaking countries. And I think it's very much important for us, India, Japan, to continue to work with those English-speaking countries. After all, they share the same similar values of human rights and democracy and parliamentary system and open media and so on and so forth.
Taniguchi-san, when you're talking about being firm yet not being isolated, but there are still moves being taken. Say, for example, how Japan has set up that fund over 2.3 billion, I think, to try and move supply chains and manufacturing hubs out of China. And I think there is collaboration between India and Japan, or there is a lot of more potential for that. How do you see that fitting in the whole jigsaw?
I think Japan and many, many others have learned very much painfully that when it comes to critical and crucial medical kits, personal protective gear, and the like, you cannot bring those things so much easily offshore. So beginning from facial masks and so on, I think it's going to be far better for any country to be able to manufacture those crucial materials. And supply chain network is vulnerable. Again, it's proven to emerging black swans. Sometimes it could be a flood, which occurred in Malaysia some time ago, and this one pandemic, COVID-19, and there will be even more black swans. So the business continuity planning should include onshoring, not offshoring. So although this is just a drop in a bucket, it's a small step, but I think it's bringing Japan in a right direction. I think it's been something that many other countries, including the United States, have started to do.
Professor Taniguchi, and specifically in terms of India and Japan, how do you see them cooperating in that sense, in terms of moving supply chains and manufacturing hubs to India, which, like you pointed out, has a wealth of knowledge in terms of English-speaking skilled labor that can be utilized, even though there are other economic reforms that need to be done?
The best asset I think India could provide the rest of the world is the fact that you can hide very little. You can conceal very little because your media are brutal. The members of the press are brutal, which I think is among the best assets that India could provide the rest of the world. I can tell you, members of the Japanese corporations that work in India feel much, much more relaxed and easier than, say, working in China. Because in China, everything is murky, everything is opaque, and it's very much hard to see what's actually going on in Beijing at the power center. Whereas in India, although you speak many different languages, at least English language is universally accepted language, and you've got a flourishing English speaking media, the biggest of its kind in India. And I think that's going to be a long-term benefit that should continue to benefit India's growth. The pace with which India-Japan economic development is proceeding arguably is slow. And I think many people are frustrated by that. But let's be long-termist with each other. And long-term, India promises to be the biggest flourishing economy in the world. And I think Japan should only benefit from its strong bond now being created with India. So the investment that Japan is doing by private corporations, politically by Shinzō Abe and perhaps the next prime minister as well, is long term in nature.
Long term in nature, do you see that also happening, as you were pointing out, a successor? I think on the 14th or the 15th, the LDP will decide on that, and there are lots of names already doing the rounds. The Chief Cabinet Secretary Suga, your ex-defense minister Ishiba, current defense minister for that matter, Kono, and ex-foreign minister Kishida. Tell us a little bit more simply about that process and whether that will ensure continuity in Prime Minister Abe's policies, foreign policies.
Um, over the last 48 hours, people are starting to say that Suga, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga, is going to be probably the strongest candidate. Who knows? You know, and in the political arena, all things are possible.
Yeah.
Let's say Suga, however, is going to be chosen as the next president of the ruling party by definition, by the parliament as Japan's next prime minister. I can say for sure, because Suga has been working with Abe every single day for the last 7 years and 8 months about domestic policies and about foreign policy formation. There is going to be a continuity and consistency you could expect most from Suga. What about other candidates? Kishida arguably is regarded as the second runner for the contest, but Kishida spent 5 years with Shinzō Abe as his foreign minister. And Kishida, I think, has met a number of times his counterpart, for instance, Mr. Jaishankar from India. He needs no persuasion when it comes to the importance of strengthening India-Japan relationship. So from the Indian perspectives, you could expect pretty much the same as before.
Professor Taniguchi, you're saying who knows in politics. Now, we've seen what happened after the first term of Prime Minister Abe, and his medication got better enough to let him be the longest serving single stint Prime Minister for Japan. He talked about it in his press conference as well. The medication could possibly be better. Do you rule out any possibility of Prime Minister Abe making a political comeback if his health allows in the future, like he did for his second term?
He is not so much old yet. Born in 1954, he could make a comeback. And there are many unfinished agendas for him. So I, for one, my personal opinion is, I, for one, wish that he could regain his stamina, he could regain his healthiness, and the situation should call out loud for his third comeback. But I don't have any crystal ball. I can't say anything for sure.
Absolutely. Professor Tomohiko Taniguchi, absolutely appreciate your time, your experience, and your insight.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
And just a reminder to our viewers, you can get the latest on our website, StratNews Global. Just click on the bell icon on our YouTube channel to get reminders for videos like this that we put up. And if you enjoy our kind of journalism, do go onto our website to support our initiative. You're watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.